My savings account made me $4 last month. Inflation made everything $40 more expensive. I was doing the right thing and still losing. Emotional open. You did everything right. Not in a vague, general way, actually right. You set up the automatic transfer. You didn't blow your paycheck the week you got it. You have the emergency fund, you check the balance and it's there, just sitting, doing what you were told it was supposed to do, and somehow you still feel behind. Prices went up. Rent went up. Groceries went up. Your friends who seem to spend more than you somehow seem less stressed about money than you are. And you're sitting there with your responsible savings account, wondering what you're missing, wondering if there's a version of this where doing the right thing actually starts to feel like it's working. Here's what nobody told you. The advice you were given wasn't wrong. It was just written for a different decade. And the gap between that decade and this one is quietly costing you more than any impulse purchase ever did. This isn't about discipline. This isn't about trying harder. This is about a system that changed underneath your feet without updating the manual it handed you. Point 1. The math nobody showed you. Let's just do the math, because nobody actually does the math out loud. The average traditional savings account in the US pays somewhere between 0.05% and 0.5% interest. If you're at a big bank, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you're probably closer to the bottom of that range. Call it 0.5% to be generous. Inflation in the US has averaged around 3% annually over the long term. In 2022, it hit 8.8% globally. Even now, after central banks spent 2 years raising interest rates to bring it down, it's still running above the 2% target most economists consider stable. So here's the number that matters. Your savings account is earning 0.5%. Inflation is running at 3% or more. That means, in real terms, what your money can actually buy. You're losing roughly 2.5% of your purchasing power every single year. It sits there. $10,000 in a traditional savings account for 5 years at 0.5% becomes about $10,250. Sounds fine until you realize that same $10,000 needed to become roughly $11,600 just to keep up with 3% annual inflation. You gained $250. You needed $1,600. You are behind by $1,350 and you never made a single bad decision to get there. Now run the other scenario. $10,000 invested in a basic index fund tracking the S&P 500. The S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10% annually since 1926, according to Morningstar. After inflation, that's around 6 to 7% real return. $10,000 at 7% for 5 years becomes about $14,000, not $10,250, $14,000. Same starting amount, same 5 years. $3,750 difference, and that gap gets bigger every year you wait, not smaller. This isn't a hot take. This is just arithmetic that nobody put in front of you at the right time. Point 2. Why you were taught to save and not invest. I want to be really clear about something here because this matters. Your parents weren't wrong to tell you to save. They were working with real information from their actual lived experience. In the 1980s, savings accounts were paying 5 to 8% interest, sometimes more. There were periods in that decade where you could park your money in a basic savings account and beat inflation without touching it. The advice worked. It made complete sense. Then 2008 happened, the global financial crisis. Central banks cut interest rates to near zero to prevent a total economic collapse and kept them there for over a decade. The savings account that used to earn 6% now earned 0.06%. That is not a typo. The instrument your parents trusted became something completely different. And the advice didn't update. That's not their fault. That's not your fault. That is a generational economic shift that happened largely without anyone standing up and saying, hey, the old playbook doesn't work anymore. The top 10% of US households own about 89% of all stocks in this country, according to Federal Reserve data from 2023. That number is not an accident. It's the compounded result of decades of wealthy people putting their money to work while everyone else was told to keep theirs safe. Safe in an account that was losing real value every year. The Great Depression shaped a culture where having cash meant survival. That fear got passed down. What didn't get passed down was the context, that the financial environment that made Cash King hasn't existed for a long time. Point 3. The cash drag problem. There's a term used in investing called cash drag. It describes exactly what's happening to your money right now if you have more saved than you actually need as a buffer. Every dollar sitting in a low-yield savings account past your actual security threshold is a dollar that isn't compounding. It's not growing at 7%. It's not keeping up with inflation. It's just sitting there, technically yours, practically shrinking. The question most people ask is, how much should I save? And that framing keeps you stuck. The better question is, what is the minimum I need in cash for genuine security? And what can everything else be doing? The standard guidance that most financial planners agree on: 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in cash. That's your buffer. That's what keeps you out of debt if you lose your job or your car breaks down or something unexpected hits. That amount should absolutely exist, and it should stay liquid. Everything above that, that's where the math changes. Because everything above your security floor sitting in a 0.5% account isn't safety anymore. It's just cost. The cost of avoiding a conversation about investing that nobody made comfortable for you to have. $10,000 held in cash since 2000 has lost more than 40% of its purchasing power by 2024, based on consumer price index data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The money didn't go anywhere. The world just got more expensive around it while it sat still. Point 4. The counter-argument, because you're thinking it. I know what the objection is. I had it too. Investing is risky. Markets go down, people lose money. 2008 happened, 2022 happened, crypto crashed. You can do everything right and still end up with less than you started with. That is true, and I'm not going to tell you it isn't. But here's the reframe that changed how I thought about this. The question was never, is investing risky? The question is, compared to what? Because not investing is also a risk. It's just a slower, quieter one that never shows up as a red number on your phone. Inflation doesn't send you a notification when it erodes your purchasing power. Your savings account doesn't alert you when its real return goes negative. The loss is invisible, which makes it feel like safety, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. Over any 20 or 30-year period in the history of the S&P 500, the market has never produced a negative return. Not once. There have been brutal years, 2008, 2022, the dot-com crash, but over 20 or 30 years the trajectory has always been up. The risk of investing in a diversified low-cost index fund held for a long enough horizon is not the same as the risk of buying a single stock or putting everything in crypto. We're not talking about the same thing. What I'm not saying, put everything in the market, ignore risk, don't have a buffer. What I am saying, the version of risk you were taught to fear and the version that's actually most relevant to someone in their 20s are not the same risk, and conflating them has kept an entire generation sitting on the wrong side of compound interest. Point 5. What to actually do with this. So here's where it lands practically, and I want to be specific because vague finance advice is how we got here in the first place. Step 1. Your emergency fund goes into a high-yield savings account, not your regular bank, not the account where your paycheck lands, a separate high-yield savings account. Fidelity Cash Management, Sophie, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally, these were paying 4 to 5% APY as of 2024 and 2025. That's still not beating a great investing year, but it's actually keeping pace with moderate inflation. Your security buffer should at least be working for you while it sits there. Step 2. Everything above 3 to 6 months of expenses goes to work. And I mean that literally. The concept is simple, even if the mechanics feel intimidating. An index fund is a single investment that holds hundreds or thousands of companies at once. When you buy a share of VTI or VOO, two of the most common total market index funds, you're not betting on one company, you're betting on the entire market. Historically, that bet has paid off over long time horizons. Dollar cost averaging just means you invest a fixed amount on a regular schedule, $50 every 2 weeks, $100 every month, regardless of what the market is doing. You don't try to time it. You don't wait for the right moment. The right moment doesn't come. You just go. When the market is down, your money buys more shares. When it's up, your existing shares are worth more. Over time, the average works in your favor. I'm not telling you to move every dollar tomorrow. I'm telling you that the framework you were handed, save everything, invest nothing, call that responsible, is not serving you in the economic environment that actually exists right now. Close, here's the thing they didn't tell you when they handed you the advice to save. The system that advice was designed for doesn't exist anymore. Interest rates changed. Inflation changed. The gap between what your savings earns and what it needs to earn just to stay still, that changed. And nobody updated the manual. You weren't doing it wrong. You were doing it right for a world that already moved on without telling you. The honest reframe. Saving money isn't the enemy. Keeping it in the wrong place for too long past the point where it's actually protecting you. That's the thing quietly compounding against you while you think you're being responsible. Your money can work. It has been sitting there waiting for you to let it. Next video, we're going to go somewhere more uncomfortable, because the question isn't just where your money is sitting. It's why, even when people understand all of this, they still don't start. And the answer has nothing to do with money.